Guillermo del Toro is a modern-day auteur that uses mise-en-scène and semiotics to create fantasy worlds that convey his political opinions and much about his characters. Pan's Labyrinth is del Toro's 2006 feature film following the young Ophelia. She is forced to move onto her stepfather's military base at the end of the Spanish Civil War and uses a world of fantasy to escape reality. Through the lens of childhood wonder, del Toro circumnavigates the issues of representing war. The character of the Pale Man is an iconic symbol of Pan's Labyrinth. Del Toro uses this unique and terrifying creature to represent several things. Part 1. Vidal and the Civil War. In the Pale Man scene, Ophelia is faced with a table filled with a feast. The food is all large and shining, looking particularly tempting to Ophelia as she has been on rations due to the Spanish Civil War. The Pale Man is shown at the head of the table, mirroring an earlier shot of Vidal at his own feast. This creates a link between the two, as well as critiquing the greed of the rich and powerful, hoarding food and resources during a time when so many were starving. This scene features two key props, a key and a knife. These are the focus of Ophelia's attention as the reason she came to the Pale Man's lair. These props are interesting, as they are also mirrored in another part of the film as recurring symbols of rebellion, repeated in Mercedes' Digestus later in the film when she overpowers Captain Vidal. A seemingly weaker female character using a key and a knife to defeat a monster defies typical horror and fairy tale tropes of the damsel in distress. This also develops the parallel between the Pale Man and Captain Vidal. Part 2. Hitler and the Holocaust. A pile of worn kids' shoes are focused on in the Pale Man's lair. This prop is a solid symbolic sign, as the imagery is reminiscent of the concentration camps and the Holocaust. This sign is almost certainly intentional, as Pan's Labyrinth is set during the end of World War II, and could implicitly suggest that the Pale Man is a displaced version of Hitler. While seeming like an excessive leap in judgment, this parallel is purposeful and meaningful. David Archibald stated the lack of depiction of the Spanish Civil War is due to the holocaustal nature of the events that he believes could make it unrepresentable by conventional artistic modes. Del Toro utilises Freud's logic of dream work within the fantasy world of Pan's Labyrinth to convey the horrors of war through the dreamlike lens. Freud suggests that dreams cannot permit the representation of taboo, forbidden and traumatic events, similarly to how Ophelia's magical world permits the inclusion of war and the horrors of her own life. While Captain Vidal and the Civil War are not allowed to be present due to the dreamwork rules of the Fantasyland, the Pale Man is there as a symbolic sign of Captain Vidal within Ophelia's own pragmatics, and, in a larger context, Hitler. While a controversial and challenging subject matter, using a literal monster to portray the Holocaust and the Spanish Civil War is an inspired use of semiotics that allows these often unrepresentable topics to be explored through fantasy. Part 3. Jesus, the Devil, and Religion. The design of the Pale Man's lair is distinctive and representative of the tones and themes Del Toro is trying to convey through this character. The structure resembles a Catholic church, with many pillars and arches and tapestries depicting the past decorating the walls. A slow pan draws the audience's attention to a set of tapestries painted on the walls. These tapestries depict the Pale Man killing and eating children and are reminiscent of Catholic paintings and stained glass windows in churches, reinforcing the idea that this is a temple-like place dedicated to the monster. Del Toro may have created this link between the church and the lair intentionally. Del Toro was raised by his devoutly Catholic grandmother in a home filled with strong Catholic imagery that made him fear hell and purgatory. He called himself a tortured soul who suffered from the guilt of Catholic mythology. By having this evil monster live in a place resembling worship, he criticises the Catholic Church and the monsters within it. The fruit could also be religious imagery, as Ophelia is explicitly forbidden to eat any of it, yet chooses to. This has allusions to Genesis, where Eve eats from the tree of forbidden fruit, connecting the Pale Man to the devil, as he is the one with the tempting food. The design of the creature's eyes also links to religion. The Pale Man's eyes are placed in his hands rather than his head, reminiscent of the Catholic stigmata, a visual mark on the palms mirroring where Jesus was nailed to the cross. This could suggest that the Pale Man represents the sins Jesus died for, or even the sins of the Catholic Church during the Spanish Civil War. Del Toro states how he noticed classic horror movie monsters were often juxtaposed with images of Jesus, and, in particular, mentions how to him, Boris Karloff, as Frankenstein's monster, rose as a messiah figure, one who died and was resurrected and died again for our sins. Del Toro found comfort in horror at a young age. He, therefore, could be comparing the Pale Man to Jesus in another implicit criticism of the Catholic Church, saying that the Pale Man is the worst kind of monster, as he does not juxtapose Catholic imagery, but embraces it.